Our team chose Bitcoin for our consumer behavior project. We have 4 members, Michael, John, Isaac, and myself, Liza. Let's start by explaining what Bitcoin is. Bitcoin is a digital cryptocurrency that is similar to a commodity like gold. This currency is considered to be very secure because it is built on blockchain. There is finite amount of Bitcoin, which helps it be more stable than most global currencies. Anyone can invest in Bitcoin, but currently you cannot purchase cryptocurrencies through traditional investment brokerages. Bitcoin is not regulated or controlled by any nation or group. It is based only on the internet and controlled by Bitcoin owners. This is why many feel it has the backbone of globalized currency. The problem. We found that most investors still aren't buying or using Bitcoin in any way. Our target behavior is to increase the quantity of investors buying Bitcoin. Our target segment focuses on working adults in the U.S. who have some other type of investments.
All right, so from our research, we knew what the problem was and what we wanted the future behavior to look like. As such, we hypothesized what might be promoting behaviors that were in line with target behavior, what distracted from the target behavior. So, looking at driving factors, we first looked at it and thought about what would be driving individuals to invest in Bitcoin. We assumed that more people must be hearing about Bitcoin. Bitcoin is becoming more well-known, and the use of cryptocurrencies is becoming much more prominent. People may not even realize it, but they may be driven to it because it's simply talked about more. Additionally, Bitcoin has been around for 10 years now and is still growing. Within the past year, has been growing substantially. The longer it is around, the more opportunities people have to become familiar with it, which could drive people to invest in Bitcoin. People who are consciously looking into investing in Bitcoin may have researched or heard about these popular news items. Like Elon Musk recently invested in it, and he's extremely innovative. Perhaps it's going somewhere. Cryptocurrency was the fastest growing asset of 2020, and it may continue to grow. Large companies like Tesla and Square are choosing to invest in Bitcoin. Individuals may see these events as positive factors because large companies and prominent names are beginning to invest in a fast growing asset. These could all be driving factors into why people are investing in Bitcoin. Restraining factors that we have hypothesized that could be impacting the target behavior could be as simple as people still do not know what it is. Yes, it is becoming more prominent. However, people really don't understand what it is. Since they really don't know what it is, they likely aren't going to invest their money into it. Additionally, stories of volatility and risk could scare people and provide them with a negative perception of the asset. If we have negative feelings revolving around Bitcoin, it feels more likely people are unconsciously going to avoid it. People who are potentially looking into Bitcoin but decide not to invest might have tried to figure out how to purchase Bitcoin, but did not successfully do so. It requires opening a crypto wallet or another medium that can access cryptocurrencies and attaching a bank account to it. This also goes with the point that individuals need to set up a separate brokerage account. A little research and self-education need to be done in order to become a Bitcoin investor. This amount of effort might dissuade people from doing it. Others might be risk averse and see that it's grown substantially and guess it's just as likely for it to lose value quickly. With all these factors considered, we were excited to do some research to see what people actually thought.
As part of our research, we conducted a few interviews of both Bitcoin owners and people who are fairly unfamiliar with Bitcoin. And we've really learned a lot about their thoughts and impressions and behaviors surrounding Bitcoin and captured those in a voice of customer analysis. As you'll see on our next slide, we created this affinity diagram, which summarizes our main findings. And I won't go over this diagram specifically right now, but it really helps us to break all their needs down into 3 main categories, which are that Bitcoin needs to be seen as commonplace, as well as that there are opportunities for financial gains, and that education builds confidence in Bitcoin. And so to look at this need that consumers have to see Bitcoin as commonplace, one of the customers we interviewed said the following: They said, if I was talking to my neighbor and he said, yeah, I'm investing in Bitcoin, I'd be like, oh, normal people invest in Bitcoin. Another part of the interview, that same person said that he didn't know a single person who owned Bitcoin. And this sentiment is pretty common among the average investor. Another consumer said, generally people invest in things that they can relate to or have some knowledge of. So it's easy to invest in real estate because you can see it. And since Bitcoin is not commonplace or really usable anywhere currently, investors can't see the value of it. Luckily, it seems that people are warming up to the idea of Bitcoin, and several consumers that we interviewed noted the recent popularity gain and success of Bitcoin, and others mentioned that it's a positive that bigger companies and institutions have started investing. So the second main need that we found is that consumers really need to be educated in order to gain confidence in Bitcoin. And I'll move this here. And there seems to be a direct correlation between knowledge of how Bitcoin works and consumer trust in it. Several of the people we interviewed have researched it heavily, and that led them to personally invest in it, while others knew very little of it, and they generally had very skeptical perceptions of it. The source of information matters. News and public knowledge has traditionally been negative towards Bitcoin, and even within the Bitcoin community, there are people called pumpers, which one interviewer explained are Bitcoin owners who try to get others to purchase it just to drive up the value of Bitcoin. But the general tone from the skeptics was distrust and an unknown fear of the volatility. And these two things came up frequently from those who were not educated about Bitcoin. And in contrast to that, the ones that we spoke to who knew about Bitcoin and had researched and educated themselves on it, they spoke about the potential future impact of Bitcoin on the world and the benefits of it over traditional financing options. And they mentioned that Bitcoin has a solid track record of 10 years of growth. And even though there's big jumps and movements in and volatility, they've been able to see a general upward trend of it. So it's clear education builds confidence in Bitcoin. And mental models are really how we understand the world. Not only do they shape the way that we think and how we understand, but they shape our connections and opportunities that we see. So education helps to resolve unclear or wrong mental models. So those who have not been educated in Bitcoin, they have an inaccurate mental model based on their limited understanding of Bitcoin. And without really understanding it, the learning we got from our surveys is that those who don't understand Bitcoin innately don't trust it. They have a gut reaction against Bitcoin. So education is important. And then the final major need that we found was that they needed to see opportunity for big financial gains. Money motivates, and success earns trust. And that was evident from a couple of our interviews. One investor said, I've seen a lot of growth. So at this point of time, everything's to be going in a positive direction, and I feel good about that. And another said, I'm fascinated by companies and their growth. So I think it's exciting to watch companies that grow rapidly, and then by extension, being able to be a part of the growth, I think is really interesting and exciting. Another investor told us about how he invested a while back on pressure from his family and didn't think about it too much, but now he's made a ton of money from that investment. And when asked if he would invest more, he said he definitely would. So when these average investors were able to see the growth in the financial opportunity Bitcoin provided, their trust and interest in cryptocurrencies increased. That was true both for the ones that saw growth in their own Bitcoin holdings and those who were watching it from the outside and seeing it grow. Their trust grew as they saw these big opportunities for financial gain.
Which brings us to the solutions. So we as a group came up with 3 different solutions to overcome the roadblocks that we saw our consumers experiencing as they, as we rather discuss Bitcoin with them. The first is, the first solution being that we need to form partnerships with more places where you can use Bitcoin to make your everyday purchases. Did you know that you can buy your coffee at Starbucks with Bitcoin? Many of us did not know that. And that's the whole point behind the solution is even though there are select places that you can use Bitcoin currency to make your purchases, we want to increase that number of stores and corporations so that people see Bitcoin as a more common currency, a worldwide currency. It doesn't matter if you're in China, if you're in the US, if you're in Europe, you could use Bitcoin at any one of these large corporations. For our example, we picked McDonald's because of its global brand awareness. We thought that that partnership would be advantageous for Bitcoin to help with the image that Bitcoin is more common and kind of overcome that restraining factor. The second solution we brainstormed as a group was a marketing initiative that focused on educating the public about Bitcoin. As Michael mentioned, we saw a big correlation between education about Bitcoin and those who did actually purchase it. So in order to overcome those restraining forces, we also thought it would be a good idea to run a marketing campaign that focused on education. As we did our analysis, we discovered that it would be important for users to have sources of information that they trusted and that were easy to understand and that were easily accessible as well. So a marketing campaign with a celebrity sponsor that people trust. One example would be Morgan Freeman, which is a very iconic figure, appeals to a lot of people. Messaging about Bitcoin and education would be a good source for people to turn to and to learn about Bitcoin and overcome that obstacle. The third solution that we came to, or rather opportunity that we came to, was we heard over and over again in our interviews, one of the main driving factors for purchasing Bitcoin was the thought of financial gain. In order to fully leverage this, we thought about kind of implementing a second marketing campaign focused on creating the perception that people around you are investing in Bitcoin, which they are. So for example, in consumer behavior, we learned about social identity and social norms and how people want to assimilate themselves with people that are like-minded. For example, Elon Musk, Mark Cuban are big public figures who also invest in Bitcoin. A marketing campaign led by figures like this we believe would lead a lot of people to invest in Bitcoin and kind of strengthen that driving force of belonging to a social group that is targeted for Bitcoin purchasing. So kind of in recap, we've talked about the problems, we've presented some solutions that may be a good idea to encourage Bitcoin usage, and we just want to say thank you again for watching.